under specific conditions of the former vice president of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Jean-Pierre Bemba. He has been acquitted on war crime charges. Bemba, 55, has been in the ICC detention centre for a decade since his arrest in 2008. Southern African Litigation Centre was very vocal after the South African government allowed Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir to slip out of the country. South Africa, as a signatory to the ICC's Rome Statute, was obligated to arrest him and hand him over. Now we have in our studio the international consultant of the International Criminal Court, the Southern African Litigation Centre, Suzgo Lungu, to talk about the whole issue around African countries and the ICC. Mr. Lungu, thank you very much indeed for your time. The ICC castigated the former Congolese vice president initially. Now his 18-year sentence has been reversed. Why?
So the appeals chamber, because the former president had appealed against his conviction to the appeals chamber. So basically his appeal has been successful. The appeals chamber has reversed the findings of the lower court. Principally the appeals chamber has found that he could not have known the actions of his subordinates, to put it in a minor literal way. But basically it was about the command responsibility, that much as he was a commander of his armed troops, he wouldn't have known everything that his subordinates were doing on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, with regards to the appeals chamber and the ICC ruling that he could not be held responsible for the crimes of his troops, what sort of precedent is this setting? What sort of repercussions will this have on international justice?
Yeah, it is a very, very serious decision. I mean, it is implicating very much on the fight against international crimes, particularly, the unique nature of this case. This case involved, among others, committing crimes using, sexual violence as a means of committing war. And that's something that the court has actually overturned. You would find that most of these violences against women are quite prominent in these armed conflicts. So the finding of the appeals chamber has serious implications on this fight.
The acquittal, what does this say about the credibility of the ICC?
Well, it depends on which side of the coin you are in. I mean, you can look at it as also showing that the ICC is quite independent. Despite the pressures and indeed the serious nature of the case, it still had to decide independently, although the principles that it has actually pronounced are quite unprecedented, and much as we're still analyzing them, they are very, very concerning.
In terms of other African countries, and they've been very vocal in terms of the ICC and its credibility, is this some sort of vindication for them? Well, the narrative about the ICC targeting Africans also depends on the facts on the ground. I mean, the facts are not reflective of that narrative, because much as the ICC is investigating crimes and prosecuting, suspects from Africans, most of the cases were taken to the court by Africans themselves. So obviously, when one makes that argument, also has to look at the facts on the ground. The facts on the ground are quite to the contrary. Well, I guess the question still stands. What happens to the crimes in, say, for instance, Serbia, Syria, Bosnia, Afghanistan? What happens then?
Yes, that's one of the, what we call an archive view of the ICC, that probably is the speed at which is conducted the investigation. These are the unique cases. You talk of Afghanistan, even Syria itself. But we need to understand the jurisdiction of the ICC, that it can't just investigate each and every crime and each and every situation. It will only investigate crimes depending on particular situations. For example, if a case has been referred to the Security Council, that's one area. Otherwise, you have to be a party to the statute for the ICC to have jurisdiction over your situation.
And what about South Africa's position in terms of the intention to withdraw and the international crimes bill? What's your impression on that?
Well, as an organization, we are actually advocating for South Africa to remain in the ICC framework. But we are also analyzing the situation, analyzing the developments, and we feel that the current bill as presented in Parliament does not meet, all the objectives behind the fight against international crimes.
Yeah. Mr. Lungu, if not the ICC, what's the alternative? What are the other regional accountability mechanisms in place in order to deal with such issues?
Well, unfortunately for the international crimes, what we have is only the ICC. The African Union has only started, the framework, they have adopted an instrument to establish the African court to also have jurisdiction over these crimes. But that statute is not yet in force. It hasn't received enough ratification. So as things stand at the moment, there is no other international framework apart from the ICC. So
let's leave it there. Suzgo Lungu is an international consultant of the International Criminal Court for Southern Africa Litigation Centre. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
Let's look at other international news now.